I want you to stop what you're doing for a second. You hire a nanny. Completely normal. You check her references, she's great with the kids, and everything feels fine. Weeks go by without a single issue. And then one afternoon, she says something to you. Something so specific, so personal, that the air in the room changes. Something no stranger could know. Something you haven't thought about in maybe 20, 25 years. And she says it so casually, like it's just small talk, like she's commenting on the weather. And your stomach just drops. You're standing in your own kitchen, in your own house, and suddenly you feel like the floor isn't quite where I left it. Every single hair on the back of your neck stands up, and your brain is going, how does she know that? That happened to me, and by the time I figured out the truth, I didn't know whether to cry, to scream, or just sit down on the floor and stare at the ceiling until something made sense again. My name is Daniel, and this is the strangest, most disorienting thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life. Okay, let me back up. 2 years ago, my life was a lot. I'm a project manager. My wife, Claire, had just gone back to work full-time after our second kid. We had Mia, who was 4, and Jake, who was almost 2. Anyone who's had a 4-year-old and a toddler at the same time knows you are surviving, not living. That's just the truth. Claire and I were running on empty, snapping at each other over nothing. The house looked like a toy store had exploded inside another toy store. We needed help. So we decided to hire a part-time nanny, 3 days a week. Someone to help with pickups, meals, bath time, the basics. We went through an agency, interviewed 3 candidates, and one of them was a woman named Margaret. She was in her mid-50s, quiet, warm, the kind of woman who just seems steady, like nothing rattles her. The kids took to her immediately. Mia, who barely speaks to strangers, walked right up to her and handed her a drawing within 10 minutes of meeting her. Just marched up and handed it over like they'd known each other for years. I remember thinking, that's a good sign. We hired her. The first 2 weeks were genuinely perfect. The kids were happy, she was professional, everything was exactly what we needed. And then things started to get a little weird. It started small, easy to explain away. The first thing I noticed was the way she looked at me sometimes. Not in an aggressive way, not creepy exactly. It was almost the opposite. It was like she was trying not to stare. Like she'd catch herself mid-look and quickly find something else to focus on. Like she was embarrassed about something she couldn't stop doing. I figured maybe I reminded her of someone. You don't think much of it. Then one afternoon, I was in the kitchen making coffee and she was cleaning up after the kids' lunch. She started humming something very quietly, almost under her breath. And I stopped. I knew that song. I couldn't name it, couldn't place it, but something in my chest recognized it. The way you recognize a smell before you can figure out what it is. Like a memory that lives in your body rather than your head. I asked her, "What is that song?" She paused, just for a second, and she looked at me with this unreadable little expression before she answered. "Just an old lullaby," she said. "My grandmother used to sing it." She smiled, went back to wiping the counter like it was nothing. I probably stood there for a full minute staring into my coffee. Then a week later, I came downstairs in the morning and she was already there. I had a scratch on my arm from where Mia had caught me with a toy the night before. Margaret glanced at it and said very casually, "You always seem to heal quickly." You always seem to. Not, you seem like someone who heals quickly. Not, I bet that heals fast. You always seem to. Like she had a history with me to draw from. I looked at her. What? She blinked. "Oh, sorry, I just meant it doesn't look too bad. Some people scar easily." She smiled again and went right back to what she was doing. I told myself I had misheard her. I hadn't misheard her. A few days later, I came home from work early. The kids were napping, and Margaret was sitting at the kitchen table reading. I poured a glass of water, and she glanced up at me. "Your left hand," she said. "You always drink with your left hand, but write with your right." I set the glass down. "How do you know I write with my right hand?" She paused, just a half beat too long. "I've seen you sign things. The other day when the delivery came." Technically possible. I kept telling myself, technically possible. But then came the moment that I couldn't talk myself out of. She was helping Mia with a puzzle, not even looking at me, when she said, so calm, so offhand, "Do you have a scar on your left knee? From when you were little?" The room went silent inside my head. "I do. I've had it since I was 5 or 6. Fell off a jungle gym at a park near my parents' house. It's small, faint. You'd have to be looking for it on purpose to ever notice it." I put my phone down very slowly. "Why would you ask that?" She looked up, and for just a flash, just a fraction of a second, I saw something cross her face. Alarm. Like she'd reached for something she wasn't supposed to touch yet. Then it was gone, replaced by that same calm expression. "Mia was asking about her scraped knee," she said. "Got me thinking about childhood injuries. Sorry, didn't mean to be strange." That night, I told Claire everything. All of it. The song, the healing comment, the left hand, the scar. Claire listened carefully. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Daniel, it could all be coincidence. She's obviously very observant. Some people are just like that." Maybe she was right, but I was having trouble sleeping, and I couldn't stop thinking about the way Margaret's face had looked in that split second before she caught herself. Like she'd been standing at the edge of something she wasn't ready to step off. A few days later, I waited until Claire had taken the kids out for the morning. I needed to talk to Margaret alone. I asked her to sit down at the kitchen table. I told her I needed to ask her something directly, and I needed a real answer. She sat. She folded her hands on the table, and she looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on her before, like someone who has been bracing for an impact they knew was coming. I asked her how she knew about the scar on my knee. She didn't look away. She didn't make an excuse. She just sat very still for a moment, and then she reached slowly into her bag. She moved carefully, like she didn't want to startle me. She pulled out a photograph. It was old. Not just old, worn. The edges were soft and slightly frayed from years of handling. The image itself was faded, closer to sepia than black and white. The corners bent like it had been folded and folded again too many times to count. It was a picture of a baby, a newborn, maybe a few weeks old. She placed it on the table between us and slid it toward me without a word. I looked at it. Then I looked at her. The kitchen felt very quiet. "Who is that?" I asked. "Someone I've been looking for," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "For a very long time." I stared at her. "Margaret, what is happening right now?" She opened her mouth, closed it. Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones, immediate, like they'd been right there waiting. And she pressed her lips together and shook her head slowly. "I'm not ready," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I'm not ready yet. Please don't fire me." I didn't fire her. I honestly didn't know what to do. That night I called my parents. My dad is in his 70s. My mom is the kind of woman who organizes everything months in advance. Holidays, appointments, family dinners. We've always been close. I kept my voice as steady as I could, which wasn't very steady at all. I didn't give them the full story. I just asked, as casually as I could manage, whether they remembered anything unusual about my early childhood, before my memories start. My mom went quiet in a way that told me everything before she said a single word. "Daniel," she said, "why are you asking this?" "Just answer the question, Mom. Was there anything at all unusual about how I came to be your kid?" The pause that followed lasted maybe 5 seconds. But 5 seconds on the phone, in total silence, when you've just asked a question like that, feels like a long time. "Why are you asking this right now?" she said again. I barely slept that night. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, turning the photograph over in my mind. That worn, soft-edged photograph of a baby that no stranger should have any reason to show me. 3 days passed. Margaret kept coming. She did her job. The kids still adored her. On the surface, nothing had changed. But every time I walked into a room she was in, something in my chest would tighten. Then on Thursday evening, as she was getting her things together to leave, she stopped at the front door and turned around. "Daniel," she said, "if I asked you to let me explain something that might be really hard to hear, would you let me?" I looked at her for a long moment.
"Yes," I said. We sat at the same kitchen table again, same chairs, completely different moment. She talked for almost an hour. She talked about being 22 years old with no money, no support structure, and a situation she felt completely buried by. She talked about a decision she made, not the decision itself yet, but the weight of it, how she had carried it every day for 35 years, how some mornings it was the first thing she felt when she woke up. She talked about a baby boy she had held for 3 days. 3 days, and then handed over. She talked about a folded piece of paper she had kept, just one piece of paper with a name on it. Not the name she'd given the baby, but the name of the adoptive family. A name she had spent 3 decades trying to trace through legal channels, through registries, through every avenue available to her, most of which led nowhere. I sat completely still through all of it. My hands were flat on the table. I didn't say a word. She found me through a DNA ancestry site, one of those services you sign up for on a random Tuesday because you're curious about where your family came from and then basically forget about. I'd done it years ago. I hadn't thought about it in a long time. She matched, not as a distant relative, not as a partial result, a direct maternal match. She hired a researcher, found my name, my city, my life. And eventually, through a chain of circumstances I still don't fully understand, she discovered that I was looking for a nanny. She applied for the job. She told herself she just needed to see me, just once. She would see that I was okay, that I had built a good life, and then she would let it go. She would do her job quietly and leave. But then she actually saw me, and she started noticing things she hadn't expected to notice. The way I hold a glass, the way I heal fast, the left hand for everything except writing, something she said she does too, exactly the same way. The scar on my knee, which she knew about not from seeing it, but from a letter she had written years ago and filed with the adoption paperwork, a letter she'd written to me, even knowing I'd probably never read it, just because she needed somewhere to put the words. She had spent 35 years learning me from the outside. "I just needed to know you were okay," she said. She wasn't trying to hide the tears now. She'd stopped trying. That was all I told myself I needed. Just to know. I sat there for a long time after she stopped talking. And then I said the only thing that felt true. I had a good childhood. My parents, they're good people. They've always been good people. She nodded, pressed her hands together. "I know," she said. "That's the only thing that ever made it possible to breathe." I'm not going to tell you this ended perfectly. Because it didn't. Life doesn't really offer that. I spent weeks trying to process it. Claire was steady through all of it, listening, not pushing, giving me space to work through something I had no map for. My parents, the people who raised me, were honest. They told me what they knew. We cried together. It was hard in a way I didn't have words for. And Margaret, I still don't know exactly what to call her. I haven't landed on anything that feels right yet. She doesn't work for us anymore. That part had to end. We both understood that. But we meet for coffee sometimes. Once a month, occasionally twice. We sit across a table from each other and we just talk. The kids, what she's been doing, something funny that happened at work. Ordinary things. It's not a conventional relationship. I don't know if it ever will be. But there's a thread there. Some strange, complicated thread that stretches across 35 years, across a decision made under impossible pressure by a 22-year-old with no other options. And somehow, improbably, through a DNA registry and a job posting and a worn photograph in the bottom of a bag, that thread found its way back. I'm not angry anymore. I was for a while. That's honest. But the thing I keep coming back to is this. People carry entire hidden worlds inside them,
Whole oceans of grief and love and regret right there beneath the surface, invisible to everyone around them. You pass people on the street, you work alongside them, you hire them into your home, and you have no idea what they've been carrying or for how long. Sometimes the most important person in your story shows up in the most unexpected way. And sometimes someone who has been looking for you your whole life will finally find you. Even if it takes 35 years. Even if it takes a part-time job listing and a very worn photograph.